Greetings and bienvenidos. My name is John Nieto, and I will be demonstrating how Finale can be used in the Latin American classroom. I will demonstrate how to quickly create a score which can be made into a template. You will also be able to edit templates and pre-existing ensembles to fit your needs. I will demonstrate some of my favorite shortcuts to quickly insert notes, rests, accidentals, and to correct wrong notes instantly. Listening to your creations made easy. I will demonstrate ways to quickly set up playback and include some helpful hints. I will also discuss how to export your music. I will demonstrate how to create resources for your ensembles. I will insert graphics that I have created and insert them into Finale. And alpha notes. Yes, alpha notes will help your young music learners. While I have been a mariachi teacher for 33 years at Brackenridge High School, I have experience with band, orchestra, and jazz bands. So this allows me some experience to work with the different ensemble types as far as music notation goes. So let's get started. Music scores and templates. How to create a score from scratch. We start up with a setup wizard. So I'll click that. And you will see that there is it says select an ensemble. So you can create a new ensemble, or you have some pre-selected ensembles right here. You can select, if you select an existing ensemble, you can always edit and make it your own. But let's start with create a new ensemble. Okay. Now, let's say I was starting the beginner mariachi, which I do often. I start with strings. Then I add. You usually just have one. Then I'll add a B flat trumpet. You'll notice that the trumpet is above the violin. And for symphony orchestras, you'll know that the strings are at the bottom. But for mariachi, they're always on the top. And this is just for mariachi. And if you prefer it other ways, like some composers prefer to have the voice part on top. I keep it on the bottom because if we have more than one verse, if it's on the top, it's gonna the lyrics are gonna run into other staves. Okay. So next I need the rhythm part. So I can either choose acoustic guitar, classical guitar, all the same, or I could go all the way down to the V and select Vihuela from Mexico. But whether I choose it or not, I'm still going to change the name. I always change the name to Armonia because Armonia means the rhythm section. And specifically, we're talking about the guitar, the vihuela, and the guitarra de golpe. So we can add that there, and I'm going to change the name anyway. And then next, we need to add the bass. And the bass for the mariachi is the guitarrón. So that we have it right there. We can add a voice if we want it. And even if you were to save this as a template, what you can do here is save as a new ensemble, and then it'll have all your preferences set. You can always delete it later. Like for now, I'm going to delete it, and then I'll show you how to add it if you wanted to include the voice in one of your beginner compositions, which I have done. So I'll save this as a new ensemble, and I'll call it beginner mariachi, and I'm just gonna give it a number. Give it number 4. And so it'll be available to me whenever I want to use it. So now we go to next. Title. I just call this Caminando. And I always, under subtitle, I always put the genre. And this case, it's a ranchera lenta, where the bass plays on 1 and 3, and the armonias, they strum on 2 and 4. So it's boom, chick, boom, chick. Boom. And lenta, the word lenta means slow. And ranchera is a very common form of song in Mexico. And there are two kinds. There is a ranchera valseada. Valseada means in the style of a waltz. And then lenta, slow. There's no need. And if you're transcribing somebody else's song, you can put yourself as the arranger there, but I leave it blank. Ranchera lenta is usually in 4/4, and a good beginner key for mariachi and orchestra is the key of D major. Since it's lenta, I'll cut it to 90 beats. And this is one of my preferences. I always start off with 70 measures. I'd rather have too many than not enough. You can always delete them at the end. So here you have it. You have a score. So I don't need the arranger there. If you're the arranger, you can put your name there. Other things that we can do for this before we get started is I always change it to MIDI. It's good enough for me. There are all of these sound banks, but for to do this quickly, I just change it to MIDI. And now here, it's assigned 41 violin for the violin. But this is something that you'll thank me later if you're writing violin parts. Go to 49 strings. You'll get a much better playback. And the same thing with the guitar. Change it to 25 nylon guitar. And then you just click. Now the other thing you want to do is you thank me later. Play from the leftmost measure. Because if you're in measure 20 or 30 or whatever the case may be, and you want to listen from there, if you have not selected play from leftmost measure and you select and you hit the play button, it's going to go from the beginning. So select play from the leftmost measure and you'll go okay. The other thing I always do is I change the vihuela name to armonía because we're talking about a whole section. And I did that by selecting the staff tool. Okay. The guitarrón, even though on the instrument list it had an accent on the O, which it's supposed to have, when I give you the title, it does not have it. And if you want to add accents to words, whether it be in lyrics or instrument names, here's a quick tip. If you press Option and E, and in this case, I need a accented O, then I'll press O. Now you'll see that the O has an accent. You'll see it better if I zoom in. Guitarrón, see that? I have other preferences, but I'll leave it at that because that just might be for me. I do change this to abbreviated ARM for armonía. Option E and then O, and then N. What a lot of arrangers and composers will do in Mexico, instead of doing changing this up, they'll just call it bajo, which means bass. But I prefer this GTRON the accent for guitarrón. And how do we edit an existing ensemble? If you have a salsa band, one of the things you can do is select jazz band. And then there's a group called Sonora Santanera, and they have nothing but trumpets. And instead of having to build a score from scratch, you just open jazz and take off all the saxophones and also the trombones. So you have nothing but trumpets, and they have like 5 or 6 trumpets. So you can add another trumpet if you want. And then you could save this as a new ensemble and call it Sonora or Santanera. Santanera. And there you have your ensemble. You click next and Sonora. I'll just call it that and leave it at that for now. So you see you have your new text, your new score. Text tool. You can just call it salsa or whatever you want to put right here, or you can even do it as a dedication to my lovely wife. There you go. I have written a song called Margarita, even though there's already a famous song, Margarita. I made my own Margarita. Oh, and misspelled it there. Margarita. To my lovely wife, and there you go. Composer and so forth. Can you further edit this score? Sure you can. Let's say you don't have a piano. Here's a quick and nice tool. Delete stabs and reposition. Because if you don't, you can just delete the stabs, but there's going to be a hole there. And then trying to guess how to space them. Why go through all of that when you just delete stabs and reposition? There you go. What if you had other percussion parts? You can add, there's a drum set part, but what if you want to add a guiro or any other type of percussion? To add any staff, we're in the staff tool, go underneath, double click. There we go. Guess I had to put it in another view. So there, we can change this to any instrument that we want. And so I went back to the setup window, and you'll see under all the ensembles that are pre-existing, I now have the Santanera. And can I edit that further? Yeah, you sure can. And you also have your band templates. You have choral, general, orchestral. That's how you create your own scores for band. You can add any instruments that you want. We will now enter notes using various manners. The first one is through a mouse where you move it around and then you click. The other is through the trackpad, which I'm using with this MacBook Air. And the other is through a MIDI keyboard. Now you'll notice that right now the cursor is a quarter note, but if another favorite shortcut of mine is using a numeric keyboard. If I press 7, you'll notice that the cursor turns to a whole note. 6 makes it a half note, 5 quarter note, 4 eighth note, and so on. Okay, so before I enter any notes, I'm going to go to MIDI. Then I'm going to go to the score manager and change the sound. I have already done it. Originally, it's on violin, which is 41, but you'll get a much better sound if you go to 49 strings on the violin. The trumpet is okay. For the guitar, it's usually on steel guitar. We don't want that. So I have chosen nylon guitar, and you'll get a much better playback. Okay, we click OK. And another neat trick is there's a little arrow right here underneath the play bar, and you click play from the leftmost measure. Then you click it up to get rid of that part of the. Okay, let's insert some notes. I'll start with the violin part. So I'm just going to make something up. And here's a quick shortcut. If you want to rest, press R. And then what I'll do with the selection tool, I'll copy this to the trumpet part. And it's in its appropriate key. Now the next thing I'm going to do is use the expression tool and use the technique text. And I want the violins to play pizzicato because in the beginning, they don't use the bow, they just use the pizzicato everything. So now everything you hear, the violins will play pizzicato. And I don't want the trumpets to play long if the violins are going to be pizzicato. So a quick tip is to memorize the articulation numbers. Like staccato is 1. My favorite ones are 24 for up bow, 25 for down bow, 29 for unmeasured tremolo. Those I use a lot. There's others, but one is staccato, so you'll see all of them. We'll do that again. I have this one memorized as one of my favorites. Just one, and then nothing but staccatos. I can play that back, but I'll do that in a little shortly. And here's another quick tip. If you make a mistake, up arrow will correct it up, bring it up, or down arrow. It'll correct it instantly. So what I'll do is put 4 quarter notes. And for the armonia, they strum on 2 and 4. So rest on 1 and 3. Now let's build. When I have it play back, I'd like to hear the full chord. So how do we do that? We're on D. I press 3, gives me a third above. Now I have the D chord. 1, 2, 3. Next, I put the chord on there. Consider this the oompa oompa of the band world, right? The mariachi version of oompa oompa. So there you have it. The first 4 measures of a new piece. Now we can go on to the next. As I'm entering this, you'll notice that it's playing a regular violin sound. And for quicker input, copy and paste. Okay. Now what I need to do here for the trumpets, articulation. Now for the guitars, I'm going to start having an A7 chord. Rest on 1 and 3. So now we have an A7 in first inversion. A7. We're inserting notes. There's a mistake there. Down 1, there we're back. Get a better idea of what we're doing now. Okay. Shortcut for accidentals. Let's just play with this note, the E right here. You'll notice that I clicked that note and now it's highlighted. Now if I were to press plus, now it's a sharp. If I were to press minus, it's flat. If I were to press N, it's a natural. And another quick tip, let me just erase that and go back, pressing 5. I'm now in the quarter note. And I press a dot or a period. Now we have a dotted quarter note. Then that an eighth note. But that's not what we want. So there's a quick shortcuts. And I already mentioned how. And if you realize you made an error earlier, you just go back and forth with the arrows, right? The left and right arrows. Go to any note and you can correct it. Another quick tip. Okay. One more thing. If you teach beginners, you would like to remind them or teach them to remember their note names. But if you want to give them a little extra help, I'm highlighting this measure, and I'm going to go to miscellaneous plugins, not miscellaneous, I'm sorry, note, beam, and rest editing. The second one there on the menu is alpha notes. Now let me enlarge this and look, you're going to see what happens. Now the note names appear in the note heads, alpha notes. I thought that was so wonderful when I learned that like 4 months ago. So I use this in the first measure whenever I'm teaching new notes, and something that I included in my beginner method for mariachi, alpha notes. Wonderful. Exporting your music. There is more than one way to export your finale files for playback. And I'll discuss these quickly. We'll start by stopping this. This is a piece called Nave Espacial, which I wrote after seeing a YouTube video of the space shuttle. It's a rocket ship in Spanish. So you will notice before we continue is that I changed the guitar part to armonía. It either says acoustic guitar or vihuela. But in the mariachi, the armonía means the whole rhythm section, which is the guitar, the vihuela, and the guitarra de golpe. And you will also notice that I converted the note heads to rhythmic notation and an X, which means and the apagón technique, which is a stop. So it'll be strum, stum, stop, or dragachka, daga, dagachka, daga, dagachka. Okay, it gives it a nice little effect. And this is a joropo rhythm, which actually comes from Venezuela. And so this you heard a little bit earlier of nave espacial. And so to convert it or to export it, we, we go to under file and go to export audio file. And there are three file formats. The first is AIFF, the second is WAV, and the third is MP3. But before you do that, what we should show is I always go to play through MIDI file. Okay, that way you can easily convert to an MP3. So AIFF and WAV files sound much better than the MP3. But the reason I choose MP3 files is because it's a much smaller file, and it's easily shareable by email or through Canvas or any other learning management system. So I'll choose MP3, click save. And I'm replacing it because I already have it. But you'll notice that it's already converting it. And so it's now in the folder that I have for Nave Espacial, and it's also actually on my desktop. But that is how you share your files or export your files. Another resource that I have created for my students, or is specifically my Armonía students, is backing tracks so that they can rehearse a strum called the son jalisciense. And this is the traditional son jalisciense. It really alternates between 3/4 and 6/8. So if I wanted to reflect that, I go to speedy note entry and / to make it look like the 6/8 measure. And even though it has the feel of a 6/8 measure, we don't change it. We just leave it in 3/4, and it's understood. So what I do, I'll usually start at 80 beats per minute, and then do a save as and do it 90, then 100, 110, all the way to 150. And this one is at 136. So what I did is that I added a click track in the bottom. It's just quarter notes of the wood block playing. So this is what it sounds like. And it has several repeats. So the students get to practice this rhythm 6 times, and then they can click on the next track or just repeat this track again. So that is another um, uh, resource that I have created for my rhythm students. And I make other similar recordings of different whether it be a technique or it be a musical excerpt. It's so easy to do, and just do a save as and change the tempo so that they can practice hard passages slowly, right? That will greatly improve our students' success. I will now show you how I created some of my music theory worksheets for my classes. I started off with a default document, and then I went to utilities, fit measures, selected 2 for everything. And then I put some room in between the staff, so I just drag them down so that I could include text. Then I went to the margins, at least for the first measure. Well, not that one, but down here. And this one just, we have, that way there is room for text, for symbols, Like for example, if you wanted to just do the quarter note, let's say we're doing it right here. Then what I would do, I would go to the time signature tool, change this to 1 beat. That way you don't have all the rest. Here you see the finished worksheet. They titled it Music Theory. They could put the name and period. That's all done with text. See that? Could be moved around. Everything I did in English and Spanish. And all of this is blank. This is the key. I have the kids all write down the information underneath. Here, the worksheet that I did for note names. You'll see the every good boy does fine and FACE is present and good boys do fine always and all cows eat grass. So what I have the students do, I have them create their own phrases. Adornos are embellishments after phrases and songs. And so what I have the students do is I have them write this in every key imaginable. They'll see that the scale degrees are 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. So then in the key of G, they have to do the same intervals. So they have to draw this in 4 sharp keys and 4 flat keys. De cajón means just standard. So adorno de cajón means for this type of ranchera balseada, this is a standard fill-in. Here is a worksheet for the 1, 4, and 5, 7 chord progressions. So I have them do this 4 sharp keys, 4 flat keys. Adding graphics or fingerings. But I have selected the graphics tool here. And then what you do is you double click. And I have graphics that I have created on Microsoft Word. And I took screenshots. So here's 3 chords for the guitar. The same would be for the guitarra golpe and vihuela. For the violin, you'll see certain notes here. For the trumpets, the basic fingering. So if I put 1, 2 V means first and second vowel, I can add that onto the score. And then you resize it. So if I was teaching, you have to make it look, size it to look better. I could also take picture of actual valves and then save it as an image and have it ready in a folder. I was working with violins. Fingers. There you go. This is how the graphics look on my beginner method for violin. You see the open string. I did a dark string color so that you know that's the open string. And you will notice also that I did alpha notes here. This is how the fingering graphic looks on the trumpet part, also with alpha notes. This is the guitar and vihuela part, and I should be adding the guitarra de golpe as well here. And you'll notice that I use rhythmic notation. And rhythmic notation, you cannot use alpha notes. Here's a graphic of the fingerboard for the guitarrón. This time I put a gray line for the open string, and then a finger here. The second finger would press the C string, making it D. And there is alpha notes. for the guitarrón in bass clef. Here is a fingering chart for the guitarrón. Here is a fingering chart for the trumpet. If you have visual learners or special needs, here are some of the modifications you can show to your admin. Here's where the string, the notes are on the fingerboard, and here they are on the staff. And this is what a completed score looks like for my mariachi, for my varsity mariachi. We have 3 violins, 2 trumpets, sometimes 3 like here, rhythm parts, guitarrón, voice, and I actually use flutes, which is non-traditional, but it adds a nice sound to it. So there you have it. We've covered most of the bases to create music and make resources for your students, especially in particular, the Latin American classroom. I hope you enjoyed this and have fun creating music, and sigan adelante.